We are back with a tour of our garden, bountiful harvests we made this month, some things for you to do. All this and a lot more coming up in today's episode of California Gardening. So let's begin with the garden tour, starting with the raised beds. In the first raised bed, we have some eggplants on the side, followed by some peppers. And then we have some onions. Now these onions have been growing in this raised bed for quite some time. You can see the bulbs are becoming larger now as the days become longer. You can see some beets here. These are growing really good in this raised bed. Nice big roots as you can see here. And this is the red Baron beet variety. We have some cayenne peppers on the side as well. And these grow to about 1 or 2 years before I replace them with new plants. On the trellis, we have some snake gourds growing. You can see the snake gourd plants are growing on both sides of the trellis. And they are looking quite good here. You can see they are already developing some flowers. And as the weather warms up, they will start producing fruits. You can see some overwintered eggplants here. The small Indian eggplant that we overwintered from last year. We have a lot of ash gourd plants. They will grow all around this raised bed as well as on this ladder trellis. We sowed some okra seeds. There are 2 okra varieties here that we are growing. This is a potato plant that was a volunteer plant. And then we have the Thai eggplants on the side, the green Thai eggplants. In the next raised bed, we are growing our tomatoes in a new way. We have a ladder trellis set up to go across the raised bed. And while there are some volunteer tomato plants as you can see here in between, the tomato plants that have been planted on either side are trained on this ladder trellis. And this is the first time I'm growing tomatoes this way. It looks pretty interesting for now. The tomatoes are forming really well. And we will see how this turns out compared to a single stem tomato that's tied to a long stick. In the next raised bed, you can see that we have some rich gourd plants that are growing on the trellis on the side. And here are 2 single stem tomato plants. They are looking pretty good, producing a lot of tomatoes as you can see here. And this is a single stem method of growing tomatoes, which I have been doing for quite some time now. This is the cow horn pepper. As you can see, the peppers look like the horn of a cow. And it's a pretty popular variety, which I'm trying out for the first time this year. We also have the dwarf patio eggplant that's growing here, followed by this super chili plant, which is a new variety we are trying out this year. And this is our taro patch. The taro plants have become huge and it's time to harvest them soon. And taro has a long growing season, so we'll wait till the taro has matured before harvesting it. There are 2 more single stem tomato plants here, followed by some Nombo giant okra that we planted here. And there are some sweet potato plants which are growing here, about 3 of them, completely dwarfed by these bush beans, which are growing in a very nice way here. We have some chickpea plants or the garbanzo peas that are just beginning to form now. And on the back, you can see the ivy gourd plants that's just beginning to grow now. And that completes the tour of our raised bed garden. Moving on to the containers on one side, we have our 4-in-1 apple tree. As you can see, producing some apples here. And in the same container, we planted some ash gourd and some watermelons. We have our firecracker plant that's just beginning to show some new growth now that the weather has warmed up. We have a tomato plant. You can see single stem tomato again. And here is another tomato plant, followed by this indeterminate tomato plant that we haven't pruned. This is the Thai dragon pepper from last year, overwintered, still growing okay. And here is another indeterminate tomato plant, followed by this patio eggplant. And we have our holy basil plant growing very well. And finally our fig tree in the pot, which is now beginning to produce a few figs. Let's look at our Greenstock planters. In the classic Greenstock planter, we have some strawberry plants and a few herbs, some chilies, all growing very well. And in the second Greenstock planter, we just harvested a few onions and sowed a lot of bush beans. So we're really excited to see how this turns out. Moving on to the containers on the other side, we have our longevity spinach plant that has been growing for quite some time now, followed by our hyacinth bean plant that has been overwintered. This is the hummingbird tree, followed by some pole beans, which are just beginning to set some fruit now, looking pretty good. And finally, some more hyacinth bean plants here. We have our green bell peppers growing quite well here, followed by 2 eggplants and some more green bell peppers in this pot. We have our bunching onions. The bunching onions have now almost matured, ready for harvest. We have some chili plants that are growing here, and I will sow some cilantro around this plant. We have our strawberries. These are growing very well in this container, followed by some potatoes. We have red, yellow and white potatoes growing in this container. In the next container, we have soybeans or edamame, followed by another pepper plant. We have some turmeric plants growing here, and then some ivy gourd plants that have just taken off now due to the warmer weather. We have our mint plant that's looking really good. And we just planted some more taro in this pot, followed by more snake gourd plants that have grown quite well now. We have our potato onions that are almost ready for harvest. You can see they have divided up into multiple bulbs, all ready for harvest. We have more eggplants in this container, growing quite well. And some more eggplants. This is a compact patio type eggplant. And then we have another bell pepper plant growing in the next container. This is our cherry type tomato. As you can see, it produces a lot of tomatoes and looks quite good as well. We have our Roma tomatoes, which were overwintered from the last year. Still looking pretty good. The bush Roma tomato. And we have our giant Marconi peppers, which are growing well. And that completes the tour of our containers. And now let's look at all the harvests we made this month. Starting with the banana bud. Our Rajapuri banana plant had bananas and a banana bud that was ready for harvest. As you can see, the plant looks beautiful. The tree has grown to quite a decent size. They grow up to about 6 feet. And once the bananas are produced, you can cut off the bud or the flowers. All we do is just chop off the banana bud from the bottom, as you can see here. And this is how it looks like, beautiful looking banana bud. Beets. We were growing beets in our raised bed. We had this Indian variety of beets. It's a little hard to find, but it's very similar to the Detroit dark red beets in both size and taste. They are pretty good. You can see some beautiful looking beets here. Spring season is the best time to grow beets, spring and fall. However, in Southern California, you can also grow beets through the summer season. They grow okay. And you can look at our harvest here, beautiful looking beets. Blackberries. We have our bush type blackberry plant growing in a container, and it produced a lot of blackberries, as you can see here. Now I'm really impressed with the amount of blackberries this plant produces in such a small space. You can see so many berries here. This plant has been growing in a large pot. However, for the amount of space it takes, it produces a lot of berries, as you can see here. Once the berries turn completely black, they're sweet and they're ready to be harvested. Every few days they will produce more and more berries and they will start ripening, which is when you can harvest them. And unlike the other blackberry varieties that grow as a vine, this one grows as a bush. So it's a lot easier to maintain this plant and still get a lot of berries from this plant. And you can look at the berries here, beautiful looking berries, and they are very sweet and very delicious. So the bush type blackberry is one variety that I highly recommend you grow in your home garden. You will be amazed at how many berries you get from this plant. Broccoli. We were growing broccoli in a container. These are whiskey barrel containers. We were growing 4 broccoli plants. And this is our first harvest of the main heads. And after you harvest the main heads, you can also harvest the side florets as time goes by. So you can look at the broccoli heads here, very nice looking broccoli heads. Here you can look at the harvest, very nice and fresh broccoli. And broccoli again is a cool season crop, but it grows very well in Southern California through the summer season, after which it starts bolting. Cabbage. Another cool season crop, but easy to grow. We were growing cabbage in a container and harvesting it, as you can see here. Beautiful looking cabbage. And this is one cabbage that we harvested. We weren't growing a lot of cabbages this season. Carrots. There's nothing better than the joy of harvesting fresh carrots from your home garden. We were growing our carrots in the raised bed. And you can see this is a huge patch of carrots. And they've grown very well. The variety of carrots that we are growing is called Romance, which is a new variety we are trying this year. And they look pretty good. There are a lot of bunches of carrots that we are pulling out from our raised bed. And you can see that the carrots look pretty good. And carrots again are a cool season crop, but you can harvest them towards the beginning of the summer season. And once again, we labeled our carrot varieties. This is called Romance. Let's go ahead and harvest all these carrots. And this is how they look like after harvesting. And after washing them, they look amazing. Beautiful looking carrot harvest. Onions. So we were growing 42 onions in our Greenstock leaf planter. We did this last year as well and we are repeating it this year. You can see the onion bulbs have started maturing now. As the days become longer, the bulbs will start getting larger as well. And if you take a closer look, you can see that the bulbs have started becoming larger, looking pretty good. And we began harvesting these onions. It was a little difficult to take the onions out completely, pull them out. But we used pruners to cut off the roots, which made the harvest a lot easier. It was still quite challenging to harvest all these onions because the roots had grown so deep that it was difficult to pull them out. But yes, you can use pruners like these, chop off the roots and get your onions out for curing. And with the Greenstock leaf planter, you can grow 1 onion bulb in each pocket. And they grow quite well. I do not recommend growing 2 onions in each pocket. 1 onion in each pocket is good enough for it to grow to full size. You can see the bulbs are quite large. And the way onions grow is that they grow greens first and then pass on the energy from the greens into the bulb to make them larger. And this happens as the length of the day increases towards the summer season. And you can reuse the potting mix that you see here. What I do is I remove all the roots and compost them and then use whatever remaining potting mix I can. You do have to amend the potting mix with nutrients though, because almost all the nutrients in the soil are gone by now. They have all been absorbed by the plant that was growing. And here is our harvest, and these onions are now ready to be cured, after which we will consume them. Radish. We were growing radish in a whiskey barrel container. Lots of radish in this container. And this is the Minoves type radish, which produces long radish roots. Looking pretty good here. Radish is one of the easiest crops you can grow in your home garden. And they're also very delicious, very good for your health. You can eat them raw, you can cook them. And the best thing is you can grow them in a very limited space. You can see we are growing a lot of radish in this one whiskey barrel container. And I did not thin these radishes at all. They've just been sowed and they have been growing as is. But you can thin the radishes if you want larger roots. However, you can see that I'm still getting quite large roots here without even thinning the plants. Let's go ahead and harvest all these radishes. And you can look at our harvest here. Beautiful looking radishes. And we were really happy with our radish harvest this season. Tomatoes. No summer harvest is complete without tomatoes. And you can see here we have nice red tomatoes growing on the vine. Vine ripened tomatoes are one of the best tomatoes you can harvest. And if you're concerned about critters eating your ripe tomatoes, you can harvest them at this stage and then store them for ripening at home. This is another tomato, beautiful looking tomato as you can see here from our raised bed. This is the cloudy variety of tomato, looking pretty good. And this is our tomato harvest, beautiful looking homegrown tomatoes. And now let's look at some things for you to do in your garden. The first thing we will look at is preparation and planting. Now when you prepare your raised bed, you want to add some kind of organic matter. Here we are adding some bagged planting mix. You can use raised bed mix, potting mix, anything that you want, as long as it contains organic matter. And this adds new organic matter to the soil, which is extremely important for good plant growth. So just layer it up on the top. You can even add worm castings at this stage. And I water it down so that it settles down properly in the raised bed. And here are some chickpeas that we are planting. These are chickpeas or garbanzo beans. And there are 6 plants we will be planting here in this raised bed. The benefit of planting chickpeas is that it not only gives you chickpeas, it also fixes the nitrogen in the soil. And it's a great plant to grow every year in your home garden. So here are the 6 plants and we have planted them and we are deep watering them now. Make sure that after planting you deep water your plants for them to settle down. Hit that like button and comment below if you liked the video. And I know some of you have been waiting for the garden tour video for a long time. So I hope this was helpful and I will try to create more garden tour videos in the future as well. We'll see you again soon. Happy gardening.